to order from Monday, February 5th, 2018. We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted?
Yes.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 4 is just requesting a moment of silence for our former village president, Diane Wiedenbeck. For those of you that didn't know her, she was on the board quite like forever, and she was like 80 years old. Very much involved in the community, so let's just have a moment of silence for her. Okay, item 5 is public appearances, and this is public's opportunity to speak about any subject that's not a specific agenda item. I don't think we have anything.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Item number 6, discuss and consider the minutes of the regular village board meeting of January 15th. Any comments, corrections, or additions?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item 7A, unfinished business. Discuss and consider parking fee increase, and this was tabled at the January 15th village board meeting because I think we talked about actually making it a little higher than the proposal. There's some language in your packet that Lee has. I'll let him talk about.
Well, the first thing we ought to do is pull it off the table.
I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
remove it from the table.
Second. All right, motion and a second to remove it from the table. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
Okay,
Motion
and
passes.
as we, as staff followed up on this, there was a schedule of, a fee schedule that the village has, and a copy of that is in your packet. But we have amended that now to add these parking tickets when whatever decision is made, then we can make the $20 or $25 the amount. In our ordinances, it actually referred to this fee schedule as a schedule of deposits. So after talking with staff, their suggestion was that we change it to fee schedule. Every time you use the word fee, you have to make sure, and I'll ask the chief and Lisa, but with a fee, as was pointed out to me, a fee has to, cannot be greater than the administrative costs that we have. So it's my understanding that the administrative costs of the parking tickets would be substantially greater than either $20 or $25, so we could go with that. And I tried to set this up so that we could make the board can make periodic revisions to the fee schedule, and that fee schedule is kept at the police department and village hall. So we're open to hearing what amount you'd be pushing for, or would recommend.
I think we talked about
$25, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody think that's a reasonable?
I have a question.
Yep.
When I read the statute, the reasonable relationship for the statute states that any fee that is imposed by a political subdivision shall bear a reasonable relationship to the service for which the fee is imposed. And then it defines what a reasonable relationship is, and that means the cost charged by a political subdivision for a service provided to a person may not exceed the political subdivision's reasonable direct costs that are associated with any activity undertaken by the political subdivision that is related to the fee. So the question I have, when we start looking at this, $10, $20, $25, I mean, the legislature has obviously put a limit. You can't just go out and charge whatever you want. And I'm trying to recall what was stated last time, but it sounds like we're issuing quite a few of these tickets at certain points in time. So I do wonder whether we are, actually, if we go to $25, actually exceeding what the direct cost would be for an officer to go out and put a ticket on somebody's vehicle, because this is a fee. If we wanted to actually have a penalty, I think we'd have to go back and change Chapter 305, which, you know, deals with certain things where you actually can have a penalty, but this is not something that has a penalty. So I'd like to hear from the chief whether we're really exceeding, and how would you actually validate that if this actually becomes an issue in the future where someone says, hey, I don't agree with that, because there is an appeal procedure that's part of that provision in the statute.
Right, it's not just the time of the officer out there writing the ticket, it's the staff time in the office processing the tickets the next day and days thereafter. The officer, when he's out there, obviously has to run the plate, he has to write out the ticket, and there's that time involved, and then there's the time the staff spends actually processing the tickets, receiving payment, running the plates through the Department of Transportation and all those administrative tasks. And they spend literally hours each morning working on these parking tickets, especially when there's a bunch of them that have been written. So I would say we're pretty close to the 2025 when you're talking administrative time spent on these.
Okay.
And I think part of it is they probably come in bunches because you have none for a long time, then all of a sudden you get a snowstorm and you get a bunch of tickets and you got a couple hours worth of.
Right, and then I spend time on the phone with people that disagree about it, so I don't know if we can count that as staff time too, but yes, there's going to be quite a few more people, I think, calling in once we're paying 20 or 25 for parking tickets. $10, I think right now people really just don't care all that much.
I don't recall, did you say last time that, or I don't, maybe you weren't here last time, but is there a warning that's given like the first time, or is it just?
That's all we do for the first month or two of the
Okay.
season, is to warn people, and
Okay.
bright orange notices are put on their cars, and they have to
They're
come
well
out and
aware.
remove them from their door jamb or their windshield wiper, and they read it and says, during the winter months, you have to alternate parking so that we can plow and make the road safe. So they're given warnings.
Okay.
We just don't all of a sudden spring it on them and start writing these tickets.
So they know well, they know enough.
Yes,
Okay.
unless it's a person that just moved here last week or two, but I don't know where they would have moved from that they wouldn't know that you can't just park on a village or a city street and not have to alternate it or get it in your driveway when it snows.
Gotcha.
Arizona.
Pardon?
Arizona probably.
Arizona, yes.
Well, actually, in line with that, sometimes the parking tickets will become extremely contentious, and, you know, they get, you have a pretrial with a person that, you know, is just bound to determine, and so I think Nick's point is well taken in terms of, you know, let's just make sure that we got our bases covered, and we have in the record that what the administrative costs approximately are.
I have a question on that, because when I look at 307, dealing with vehicles and traffic, the area, in subsection, or in section H, it talks about the penalties and enforcement, and that only deals with general snow emergencies and limited snow emergencies, and not with what we're talking about here, I believe. And under that, yes, I think you do end up, you know, looking at perhaps having a conviction and having, you know, a forfeiture. But this section is not included in that, I don't think, in either B
Which section are you reading from?
305-7.
Okay.
Because I think under those sections, it has to be declared snow emergency. And so if there is a declared snow emergency, yes, then you do end up being prosecuted perhaps if you don't pay. But if under this, I think this is just a fee. And there should be a real distinction there, I think, in how they're handled, because these are fees. And we set a fee, someone has to pay the fee. And I don't know that you get your, I don't know if you have your due diligence with the fee. What my concern is maybe we're not handling this in a way that's the best way to be handled. If we're going to give them out, and we think people think they have a right to be heard, due diligence and all that, perhaps this section needs to be changed to address this, and this actually becomes a penalty. This actually becomes something then that you can be convicted of.
Like a forfeiture.
Yeah, which here this is just a fee, just like I'm going in and I'm paying a fee for a subdivision application. So I'm not sure why these would end up in court.
Have we compared, I'm assuming our language is similar to other municipalities in the area? I figured.
What happens is when people call in and want to contest, so to speak, the parking tickets, they call and talk to me. And more often than not, if they have a good reason why they park there and it's a reasonable explanation, we will just make it go away. We're not going to be hard asses about it. It's not like we need this money, but we do need to have the roads cleared so the plows can get out and do their job. So when they call and talk to the police chief, that's their day in court, and that's the way we handle it in the city of Milton also.
But here's my concern. I mean, if we're talking about Section G. So if you look at 1305-7, Section G deals with alternative side parking. That is not included within the penalties and enforcement section.
I see what you mean.
And so
Yeah.
I would question whether we can be enforcing these in the way that we are.
If we amend H, 3057H, to include G, then I see what you're saying in terms of we've specifically identified B or C, but not G. And
So
that's,
I'm like, why are we in the village court when there's no penalty or forfeiture provision that deals with that item? This is just saying, this is a fee. You know, you were there charging a fee, but it doesn't seem, to me, it doesn't seem appropriate to be charging a fee just like we do for zoning or this sort of a, because we
So-
talk about tickets, but really, this is under the fee section. This is a fee. And that's what kicks in then this statutory section where there really has to be that direct connection between what your actual costs are. Just like when someone files something with Aaron, same sort of thing. We can't make money on it.
so if we amend 3057H and add section G to that, does that, I think that take care of the issue? 'Cause I do see that we're, right now, we only have B or C.
Yeah. I don't know if we could do that tonight, though, unfortunately. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do tonight
Just change
is
it.
to amend the
Yeah.
fee schedule to change a fee. And we can do that, but what concerned me when I'm hearing about people actually contesting these, I'm like, well, how do you contest a fee? It seems like it shouldn't be under that section. It should be under the other section.
Well, if the board can proceed with setting a number, and then we'll just roll that into the ordinance change along with this change to 3057.
As a future agenda item?
Yeah, just, right, because tonight Mick's right, I mean, what we've put on the agenda is for changing the fee.
We could make it effective at the next meeting then, once we approve that language change.
There's also an additional cost. At our last law enforcement meeting, there's some discussions about getting on the taxpayer intercept program. Right now, we're having some difficulties with certain people collecting the back. So by doing that, they take a small percentage, but they can basically put it on your, you get a tax return, they can withhold it from a tax return. And part of that is the minimum fine has to be $20 to be a part of that program.
That's correct.
And I have some municipal attorney friends, not many, but some, that I've been talking to in terms of, their use of that tax intercept program and how they set it up. So that's something that would probably be bringing back to.
I mean, I see this as a, I don't know how we're handling things now, but by changing this section, we're going to actually give people due process rights, which means they can actually go in, and we have to carry the burden to convict them. Because it's a conviction at that point. I mean, they're being convicted of doing this, and then there'll be a forfeiture of not less than $20 and not more than $100, together with the cost of prosecution and penalty assessment. I don't like it. But
I mean, if you
I just don't
change
think
it,
what we're
That's
trying to do
essential.
works.
Hmm?
I don't like it, but I don't like doing this. But I don't think what we're doing now
Is really,
is proper.
okay.
but whether it's a $10 fee or a $20 fee, $30 fee, it doesn't change anything as far as, other than the fact that we have to have costs that would back that up, correct?
The problem I have with it now is I don't see that there's any due process at all. The what happens now is we're calling it a ticket, but what it really is a demand for a fee. What we're trying to say now, which doesn't seem to me make sense, because that's not really what's going on. It's not like I'm applying for something and I'm paying a fee. We're going out and putting tickets, or whatever we want to call them, on people's vehicles and saying, now you need to go down, just like you would if you were going to go in for a zoning change and pay a fee. We're forcing them to pay a fee, which is not really, I'm not sure that we can even do that, for one. But by changing this section, we're going to make it a due process right, where we have to carry the burden, and if we can carry the burden and show that we actually did it, which then we have a right to collect the funds. And I say what I really don't like about this whole process is I think it puts a burden on the people that probably least can afford to do it. I mean, if you have a home where you can park in your driveway, you probably are, right? So it's folks that don't have a place to park that get hit with this. And that part of it I don't really like, because I think it probably means that there's a lot of teenagers and other folks that don't have the ability or opportunity to park in a driveway that end up getting these tickets.
That's why it's alternate side. So you can park there when it's snowing. You don't have to have it in the driveway, but the next night it has to be on the other side.
And again, really, this is.
Most
habitual.
communities don't even
It's
allow
just
that.
emergency.
They say if it snows, get your car off the roads. They don't give you a day to move it to the other side.
Yes, but we've already designated what the emergency routes are, so those I would guess we just tow them off. And I don't know, I assume the other streets aren't as important. It's more of a snow plowing issue, I would guess, for JJ's crew, really more than an issue of we can't get folks down the street. That's why I don't like it. But I think the process, whatever it is, has to be changed. And unfortunately, by changing it and making it, I think, a correct process, it could cost people a whole lot more money.
Well, I'm happy to take a look at, I mean, it's been a while since we visited parking regulations. I'm certainly happy to come back with, some alternate language if you want for the next time. We know we're going to be making at least one change, and I guess it's a question of whether the board wants to proceed with deciding on the 20 or 25.
And I'd like to move ahead with it. I understand the basis for the language change. It's a forfeiture, not a fee. So we need to change the basis for it. But I do think we need to raise the price of the forfeiture then, not the fee.
I'd make a motion to up the fee fine, however we want to phrase it, to $25.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay.
Point of order on that, though, what we're doing tonight then is just changing the fee schedule, because that's all we have the ability to do.
Right.
Correct. Yep. Any other discussion?
The only thing I would raise that if you change the process, as we discussed, the language, you better make sure that the tickets or fees or whatever that's being placed in the car reflects that. So it's called specifically a parking ticket if that's the route we go versus a fee if that's what's on. I don't know what's on it now,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying they should be consistent.
Right.
So we have to consider that as well.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Okay, no? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Scroll back up here. All right. Down to, that's 7B then, I guess. So that ties in with what we were just talking about, discuss and consider ordinance 01/2018, amending language from schedule of deposits to fee schedule, I'm sorry, amending the language in 1-19.
Why don't we table this and just next time take care of all of the language issues at once?
Probably.
Make it simple.
All right, I'll make a motion to table till our February 19th meeting. Does that work? February 19th?
Yep, sir.
Second?
All right, motion and a second to table 7B until February 19th meeting. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay, motion passes. 7C, discuss and consider direction for transportation impact fee. A couple of links to other communities. Went to their websites and kind of explains it a little bit. Mike is here, JJ's here. We can talk with them first, I guess, and they can give us some insight on this.
I mean, I don't know if it's much them first. I mean, the memos from them were really past the past times that it was discussed, and Troy passed along other information. The only new memo from staff is just Mike quoting some, potential costs into doing this. So,
Okay. All right. Find that here. So, okay. Development. Oh, there we are. Okay. So, the statutory process, okay, we started in 1996 with impact fees. Does anybody have any questions, I guess, on the staff memo, how these impact fees are arrived at? Let's see.
I have a comment on it.
Sure.
The report that JJ handed out last time we were here, I think, really starts to set a standard, because we know what condition our streets are in, and therefore, my understanding is we really can't try to increase the condition of the streets on people that are getting building permits for new homes. I mean, so we have a standard now where we're not keeping up the streets, at least that's what we heard last time, right? We're not putting enough money toward the keeping up our streets, so we have to consider that when we're looking at impact fees, that we cannot try to do that through them.
The road maintenance budget, and if it's a project that would come out of the same pot, the general fund, and they're competing for one another, like putting signals out on School Road, and that project up there is an example of a capacity improvement for School Road and the development that would happen along there. The bigger project from last year was the Seldall Platte road reconstructions. Really not a capacity increase, and it's a existing neighborhood, so that would typically be something that would have been, it's higher end, but it's road maintenance, and there was an assessment to the property owners on that. Impact fees, when I say, planning it, it's going through and reviewing where do you need improvements, where would the signals be, We know that if there's development to the west, Cottage Grove Road has, after you get past the, or halfway past the middle school, it's back to a rural two-lane highway, and that's really not the long-term plan there. Anything done with that would be eligible. We've already have the developer responsible for the south half, but there's that north half, and we don't know when that development would happen. And you certainly don't want to build the road that way in two different pieces. So how do you fund that? Bus Road, we looked at many years ago as far as, you know, would it be an area for signalization or some other traffic control? And, you know, yes, at some point. Also included was getting our cameras out there to see, you know, what is our baseline currently in those specific areas. North of, on County Highway N, you know, there's some plans up there. Maybe it would be development completely funded. Maybe there'll be things that would need to be improved. The DOT put in, along with Dane County, the 3 roundabouts up by the interstate. The north roundabout on TT at some point should really have 2 lefts, you know, going around it, and there's some changes that need to happen there, and maybe the county would assist with that. But if it's due to increased development within the village, they'd probably be pointing back at the village. So there's another area where if that happened, you'd want to be collecting impact fees for that area up there. So.
And I think also with Bus Road and the school purchasing that 40 acres, eventually there's going to be something there, some sort of a building, which again I would assume is going to increase traffic, and the need for something at Cottage Grove Road and Bus.
And, you know, and then school entrances, maybe the school would take care of those, but then is it going to be okay as a 22, 21 foot county highway between the school and Bus Road? How is that going to be funded? So traffic impact fees for Sun Prairie came about because they had developed the far west side neighborhood plan, and they saw how Main Street needed that type of improvement. It was either not there, or some of the roads were County C, and other roads were 2-lane town or county highways, and they needed to become what they're becoming now. So they implemented the traffic impact fee for that neighborhood, which is a big neighborhood. But that rationale on how you charge impact fees is part of the determination as well. So if it's putting a signal at Bus Road, do you charge a developer in Quarry Ridge up, you know, by N, or do you regionalize it? So trying to figure out the rationale behind how you're going to do that is part of the planning of it. And then I had just updating the sewer and water impact fee too. I had a developer's engineer contact me last week regarding a development that they're looking at, and he said, I was in your ordinances, and what's the current sewer and water impact fees? I said, that's it, 2006. So it hasn't been changed since that point. And so obviously I had a less time involved in updating that because, for instance, when Gaston Road went in, we already looked at what's the development that will be served by this new water main, and what should the village be collecting on areas that could develop along that water main route. So we already have some numbers in mind for that, and it's really coordinating with your financial consultant on what they should be, and kind of implementing that with legal counsel. It takes the 3 elements, I guess, to kind of finalize a new impact fee or update, and then come back to the village board with the plan to implement.
Okay. I mean, looking at the table you have in your report, it sounds like a lot of other communities have emergency services impact fees more so than even the transportation impact fee. And I guess it makes sense. More people mean more need for service.
And I just use transportation as an example of an area that, with our growth and anticipation of a new school here in the not so distant future, that, the folks that are creating that, should probably have a bigger impact of that cost than
Mhm.
the other citizens that are here, and, you know, Gaston Road is an example that we could have had a higher impact fee, and more of that could have been taken care of. Now everybody in the village is paying for that through higher water and sewer bills, basically. And they've gone up, what,
And they're
25%, so I mean, it's fairly significant.
Just have a quick question now. Do they always have to be fees assessed and then money spent, or can money be spent and then fees assessed? Because, I mean, you know, you do all these improvements to have the development, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So is it always chicken, I mean, which comes first?
Either way.
Either way? Okay.
There's the
So we can
limit,
still recoup.
there's the limit on how far you can collect from an individual building permit and wait for an improvement to
Uh-huh.
occur.
Yeah, like 7 years or something like that, yeah.
Right. And
I
the
saw
legal
that.
experts can correct me if it's 7 or 10, but it has to be
3-year
done.
extension.
Is that like an increase in status to be called a legal expert?
I don't know, but that's not my forte. But going the other way, still could, and so.
So we can, yeah,
Yeah.
as long as it's tied.
And Trustee Allen, on the Gaston Road water main, a house that's on it now couldn't be charged, but for the future, we could still implement that for the 200 acres that would still
Mhm.
be out there, so. That, it's just that a building permit that was already, you know, delivered would be one that's.
You talked
water
about the
under
regionalizing of the impact fees, but like the emergency services is not something you'd have to regionalize. That could be
Yeah.
wherever a building permit is. It makes it a little easier to do it that, I don't know.
In my understanding on sewer and water, it really hadn't been regionalized to this
Okay.
point, but when you look at a specific thing like a big transmission water line, you know,
Yeah.
that makes a little more sense as
Okay.
far as what can develop along that. And roads are similar to that, but some things are for everyone.
But for EMS, I don't believe that could be to pay for operations. It would be for planning for a new EMS building.
Right.
Or something like that.
Well, and I was gonna ask, how does that affect, because we're a joint, it's not
Yeah.
just the Village of Cottage
Right.
Grove. So would that, you know.
Could it pay for capital equipment, or,
You mean like an ambulance?
yeah, we're always buying those.
I don't.
I know they said specifically like a pickup truck and stuff like that, you couldn't make a purchase.
Yeah.
No, you can for
So
like
I'm
the
not sure an
station itself.
ambulance would.
I think it's mainly facilities.
Tougher.
But that's a great point though, Jack, is emergency services.
Yeah.
Um,
There's just a little more causal relationship there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where it is in the village versus trying to pinpoint it down to
But you're
one.
saying it doesn't really have to be geographically pinpointed, I mean, in
Right.
other words, if we can collect development fees and then use them other places, right?
That's what I understand we're doing with sewer and water.
Okay.
Okay.
Nick?
From my experience working on impact fees, typically you start out by looking at what you think your growth is over a certain period of time, what your needs are.
Mhm.
You just don't start carte blanche, just throwing something out there and thinking we're going to collect fees for something in the future. I don't think that's can be supported, because your plan has to be supported by a study typically to show what the real needs are. And so one question I had, JJ, is also you need to give credit back to whoever is putting improvements in. So currently, developers are putting a certain level of improvements in. I'm assuming that there's dedications that are made of certain improvements with a subdivision. And I was wondering if you could kind of just walk me through what some of those are, because those would need, if you're going down to that level, we would need to be giving them credit back. Now, if we're sticking at like an arterial street level or something, that's different. But when you get down to collectors, local streets, I mean, how much are they paying, how much are they putting in now for that?
Whatever's approved by, you know, a plan commission and village board, and what we've been recommending. But you would be identifying in that study, not necessarily those streets. It would be the improvements to capacity that you have to do to things like Cottage Grove Road, Bus Road, these types of improvements. So as long as you're identifying those things outside of the developer's responsibility, that are essentially baked into the lot sale price as they develop. And you're looking at these things aside, that, frankly, this stretch of Main Street, it's still a rural road, and they didn't have a system for paying that back. the developers took care and are required to take care of what's inside their parcel. But there's all these frontage issues and abutting roads.
So where I'm headed with it, I think more than likely when you get done, it ends up being arterials, because most of the other streets are already being picked up somewhere. So you're picking up not that many streets. You're picking up the arterials. But we would need to look and see really what the, what improvements we have in like the next 10 years, or whatever period we want to pick that's reasonable, figure out what that is, figure out how much we're keeping it up now, which is not keeping it up, so we can't charge them for that. And then we look at our fee and see whether our fee really, what it would be, if anything.
Last time we considered an impact fee was some time ago, but I think at that point it was Virgil Krause that had to do with
Baker Tilly. Well, it's
Baker
not
Tilly.
Baker Tilly.
Yeah. So I mean, they had to like give us that formal basis that you were talking about.
It was Baker Tilly and MSA jointly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that study would also identify what proportion of growth is creating that need and what proportion of just everyday use from the citizens we have now to make sure that it's not disproportionate, correct?
Right.
So that would be the next step, probably.
The assessment would be next.
Okay.
I mean, this isn't in the 2018 budget, so that'd have to be another discussion. You know, what would maybe forego if this would be pursued. So Mike's quote in there, at least for their portion of things, it would be about $12,000.
For engineering for it? For the traffic.
Planning, traffic counting, estimating.
And we'd have to get a number from Ellers about what their.
Well, I mean, Baker Tilly
or Baker
has been,
Tilly, sorry.
there are rate consultants. They've helped us with impact fees and accounting help and auditing. So that's what they do.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mike?
Mike, do you remember when, in 2006, when we did this, what your costs were proportionate to BK or Baker Tilly?
Yeah, I didn't participate in that in 06.
Okay. Okay.
I can check.
Anything else? Otherwise, I guess that's the next step, is to find out how much this would cost to do the study, right?
Well, I think tonight it would be good for the board to identify exactly what you want staff to do in terms of follow-up, so that they can, so that that information can be brought back to the board.
Okay.
Just
For the
curious,
next
if
time.
are those fees recoverable, the fees that you just talked about, that we might be paying the accounting firm and MSA, are those recoverable from the fees themselves? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
The study, you're asking
I
the
don't-
study?
I don't think
What it
so.
costs for
Yeah.
the study?
No? Okay.
I'm
just
just
curious.
curious audits and anything.
Cost of
Well,
doing
it's,
business,
when
I
you set
guess,
up a
yeah.
TID, do you have the cost of setting it up? Don't you recover that, or no?
Yeah, you can recover.
Yeah,
TID's
but not, this
TID's
is different.
different.
This is different, so, all right.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments?
Well, I guess what, going back to what Lee had asked though is, or we should give staff some direction what we want to do. I guess I would be interested in identifying through a study what areas we foresee in the next 10 years. And again, I'm thinking Bus Road, we're going to start creating a TIF district up at the new industrial land on the Beacon property, which I'm assuming there may be some traffic concerns up there because of, a new industrial park at some point, and that should be within, again, that 10-year time frame.
And I think this is something with Aaron's help, with CDA and planning. We could probably, have an open dialogue with them at different
These
meetings.
projects are already listed in the comp plan, and maybe some additional ones beyond that.
Okay.
Look at them.
Mick?
Point on that, though, I mean, if we're using any money out of a TID for that, it's going to have to reduce off what we'd be charging. So, I mean, if the plan is that we're going to pay for some of these improvements through the use of funds out of that TID, that'll also be part of that report, it would need to be, because that would reduce that amount of work. And if we happen to TID all the way down Main Street. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with the TID to do these, to actually complete these improvements that need to be done.
All right, so you want them to go ahead and find out what is
Yeah,
involved
we
with the
could.
cost of the study?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, anybody, other thoughts? I'm fine with finding out what it's gonna cost us at least, and what we have to do to
Yeah.
move forward.
And part of that, if we could find out if, depending on what that cost is, would we be able to use the cable TV fund possibly to pay for the study then? Or does it have to be a line item in next year's budget?
I mean, those funds have been rolled into reserves to be used for capital expenditures, so this wouldn't be a capital expenditure.
Troy, I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head, but I know we have to be careful about what we kind of mix into the impact fee soup. Because when we first did the impact fees, we were one of the first, but we were also one of the first to be sued by the Builders Association. And eventually that went away, but I mean, I think we have to make sure that we're in consultation with MSA and Baker Tilly in terms of what sources are available.
Mm-hmm. And I also included what all the different Dane County communities is part of the packet and what all of their different impact fees are.
A couple of points on that. One, I think there's a misconception that it's people moving into your community that pay these fees. And it's not necessarily the case, because a lot of people in our community will change and move from one, they'll sell a home and buy another home. And when they do, they end up paying these fees. So, you can't really sell this as being all the new folks coming in are going to bear the burden of these additional fees. That's not the way it works.
Okay. All right, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to table this item then, or do we, is that the, because it's discuss and consider, so.
I table the item with direction. You've given direction to staff now, and then that way it shows up on the next agenda, and we can report on whether it's ready for.
Okay.
And besides some further costs from Baker Tilly's side, and could you clarify the direction for Mike and JJ as far as?
You mentioned the needs assessment. You said, is that needs assessment current? I mean,
No.
I mean, that's what would.
do we want them to pursue a needs assessment?
That would be the cost, I mean, that would be
Yeah.
what part of what Mike's talking about in that $12,000 cost.
Okay. All right. Is that,
Yeah, no, it's great.
So is the cost of the assessment 12,000, as I read in there?
From MSA's side of things to do, to develop the new fee, $5,000 in planning, $5,000 traffic counting, $2,000 estimating. And I haven't talked to Baker Tilly at this, we're just looking to get direction tonight, so.
maybe talk to Baker Tilly first and see how much that price tag is gonna go up, or see what would be all involved.
Deb, do you remember?
That's the one link we're missing here, is a financial study part of it, I think.
Then you're gonna have to have once you have that, you gotta figure out if you wanna go forward with this as a board.
Right.
Right.
What comes off the table with the current budget,
Yeah.
otherwise this thing gets,
We need to know how many dollars altogether is involved here at first.
otherwise it's pushed to 2019 at least to discussion
Right.
then.
Okay, so maybe, I guess, talk to Baker Tilly first, if they can come up with what Mike basically came up with, sort of an estimate of their share of it, I guess.
All right.
Start with that. Okay? All right. Moving on, number 8, new business. Discuss and consider release of Fourth Amendment of Fourth Edition to West Lawn Estates.
I'd ask that be tabled. We are in the process of drafting the documentation on Friday. Where'd Mike go? Morning. Mike got cost of the developer, and we're just kind of catching up with what needs to be drafted. So I would ask that be tabled for this evening
Okay.
until the next meeting.
Motion to table till February 18th, 19th?
Second.
Okay. Motion and second to table item 8A, release of Fourth Amendment of Fourth Edition to West Lawn Estates. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. 8B, discuss and consider new operator's license for licensing year July 2017 to June 2018 for Christine Andrews. I believe that's the only person in this pack. Is that correct, Chief?
Correct, approved.
Okay. And no problems with that application?
No.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Okay. There's a motion and second to approve the operator's license for Christine Andrews from July 2017 to June 2018. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. On to item 9, reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. First is Pure Court Steering Committee. Jeff had passed out a report here, and I'll let him tell us.
Yeah, so this is from Briar Patch. Jay Kiefer had given it to me to make sure I provided to all board members, that just basically outlines the cases that they did see. And then the very last page just has a summary of the year-to-date 2017 cases. There were 18 referred, 18 male, 9 female, average age is 16, and cases open, 13 of them. So, and then some of the referrals and cases seen in the other communities. So.
Okay. Sounds like Pure Court's working pretty well. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Chief? I mean, I think Pure Court's been a great thing here.
Yes, it's nice to have an alternative to just finding someone and having them pay it. They actually think about it afterwards and have to do some work and
Yeah.
write apology letters sometimes, which is very helpful.
Yeah, there was one, you'll see it in here where I think it was a young man that had to make dinner for his family.
They can get creative.
Yeah, yeah. And those are, the peers that come from the high school that come over, the actual
Yeah.
members that help kind of determine what those are going to be. They are very creative, it's a very good system.
And getting it from your peers instead of a grown-up sometimes
Yeah.
makes a big impact. So. All right, anything else, Jeff?
Nope.
Okay. Deer Grove EMS Commission.
Want to handle that, Troy?
Yeah, fire away, John, you're good at this. We can fight about it.
So we met on the 18th of January. There was a really part of the meeting where the research report done by the La Follette School of Public Affairs regarding the potential for local EMS consolidation. A group of students came, or graduate students actually, came through and presented their findings from the work they had done interviewing the municipalities, the EMS chiefs respectively from Cambridge, Marshall, and Cottage Grove, or Deerfield, or Deer Grove, I guess we call ourselves. They did a nice job. Basically, I think the study conclusion there was, keep progressing on your consideration of this. There are significant benefits potentially for the communities, but there's also some risks too. So the kind of the next step there is really for municipalities to consider whether or not they want to move forward with that study and the associated costs with that. Marshall did not show up, so I don't know how much interest they have. Didn't have a representative there. So that was kind of that. Anything else, Troy, to add to that piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marshall wasn't there, you're correct.
No, anything else to add to that portion?
Not to that part. I had something, but go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So then progressed to the normal meeting, the agenda items regarding financials. Went over 1,000 runs for 2017, which is a record. I don't like to necessarily see that, but definitely the EMS crews are keeping busy. There were, I think, 3 new recruits for volunteers, so that's a good sign. The new chief has a number of ideas I think that will be, begin to percolate through the organization as far as training and just recruiting and some other things, just a fresh look. That's always a good thing. Then updated the chief's position description again, just updating that, refreshing it with the new recruit or the new chief. Approved the LifeQuest recommendations for increasing some fees to be more consistent with other services in the areas. Some slight increases some places, larger increases other places. That may not really impact the overall revenue stream for this service, because of course many of the people receiving the service are on some sort of government subsidy or aid, Medicaid, Medicare. So that's, you don't know that, and definitely there was an appropriate need to bump some of those fees up slightly. That's pretty much it for the meeting. You had something else to add, Troy?
They did have a nice little going away for
Oh, yeah.
the outgoing chief to win.
Yep.
Other than that, we covered it.
Anything else?
Sounds good. Law Enforcement Committee, I'll let Troy take that. I was not able to make that, or James, you were there as well.
Yeah, we just got an update on well, we talked about the enrolling the taxpayer intercept program, and we handled that internally within the committee and decided that was a good idea to move forward with. Then I guess the last Tuesday, the mock assessment, how did that go?
It's tomorrow now. It
Oh.
had to be postponed because Lake Delton had that arson up there, so they had to stay up there and deal with that. So it'll be
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay, good luck with that.
Thank you.
And that mock assessment is preparing for the March 6th through 8th actual assessment. And Chief, maybe if you can just talk about what that means to the departments. I think you mentioned that like 43 of the 500 departments across the state.
Right, yeah, the U.S. has CALIA, that's federal accreditation, and most states have their own accreditation standards that you have to meet. So ours is the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group, and there's currently 42 agencies that are accredited in the state of Wisconsin, or are going through the process right now. So after March, we would be one of those 42 that's
43rd.
accredited.
That's good.
There's only 2 in Dane County right now. It's UW Police and Middleton that are accredited. And it's basically professional standards to make sure the law enforcement agency is doing its job and doing it the way it's supposed to be done. There's well over 500 standards you have to meet and prove that you're doing that. So it's been a long, hard process, and everybody in the department's been involved in achieving this. So hopefully it'll go well.
Yep. Lower insurance rates, so
Yes.
that's a big plus. And then we talked about the fact that you received the body cameras and are working on implementing them, getting the server ready and getting the technical stuff, right? Ready?
Yeah, apparently we're going to have to get another port for the internet.
Okay.
I'm not real good on these things, but
All right.
we can't wait for the server, so we have to get a new internet port. So that's
Got the
way
smart
we'll-
people working on that. That's
Yes,
good. Good.
smarter than me, hopefully.
Yeah. Me too. Okay, and then we touched on the report. Everything looked pretty good on that, I think.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Troy?
No major crime sprees or anything at the
No.
moment, so.
No murders and no armed robberies.
Right, yes.
Last year.
The
Yeah.
Uniform Crime Reporting statistics will show that we had no murders or robberies in 2017, so
That's very good.
I can't take personal credit for that. I think it's mostly up to the citizens not to
You're gonna
rob
take the
each
blame,
other.
Might as well take the credit, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that's it, unless you have
Yeah.
anything else to add.
Great, thanks, Jim.
All right, next We have Parks, Rec, and Forestry. There were a couple of links regarding the additional programming space in the municipal services building. Sean, if you want to come on up here.
Do you want to talk about everything else first, or?
Let's go ahead, dive into that. That's the exciting part. Don't bury the lead. We have space.
So we, as I put a little memo in your packet, we're looking at, just for those of you that. Technology.
Thank you for putting that together.
This is a space, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this, obviously, but our current space, we're in a 30 by 60 area. We program that 4 nights a week. Currently, 2 nights are cheer and tumbling, and the other 2 nights are adult fitness. We're looking at the possibility of being able to expand to the unit right next to us, and we would obviously we would have an area that would be about 30 by 92. I put together some very rudimentary costs for updating that space, and it would really just be, the biggest cost would be the flooring, but we would need to do some lighting things in there, just kind of paint it up, make it a little bit more pretty. Nothing really, nothing changing the structure, or actually the space itself, other than a wall about 92 feet in, which would just kind of define the 2 areas. We really don't have a plan for the back yet, but I just felt like the entire space was much more than we needed at this time. Okay. And we're looking at, it's a little bit on the inflated side, because I asked the contractor to come up with a price. We're looking at about $24,000 to do that. So I think I'm very, very positive that it would be less than that, if should we choose to do something like that in that space. We feel like being able to program both spaces at the same time. As I mentioned, cheer and tumbling, they would like to have space every night of the week, as well as our adult fitness, or we're looking at getting into some other programming in the additional space too, which we're really confident we could use that 4 nights a week as well. So, estimate would be that we could probably generate an additional $4,000 to $6,000 in revenue per year on that. So that turnaround back to get that 24,000 back would be 4 to 6 years as well.
The wall that you have 92 feet in there is not now existing, it's something just put there.
Correct.
Like a temporary kind
It
of.
is
Wide
not-
open.
Okay.
It's a
It's
big,
wide
big
open.
space, yeah.
And that would be a wall that could be removed should the space need to be repurposed down the road. It wouldn't be anything, again, that's very permanent. It's just to divide the space.
Sure.
It doesn't go to the ceiling, because then that would require us to put in another heating unit in there as well. So we're able to, kind of heat both spaces at the same time with the 1 unit that's there.
All right. Any questions for Sean?
No, I guess if we just kind of, go ahead.
What would be the cost of putting the wall up?
The wall itself, it wasn't broken down. Some 2x4s, a little drywall. I don't think the wall itself is going to be expensive. We could go with something like a curtain, like what's currently in, which would also serve the purpose. It's just less noise dampening and so forth.
I'm thinking that you actually are still going to need a path through there, right, for a fire exit?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
You
opening.
really can't just stack stuff in there and not leave some sort of way to get out.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering whether it's worth putting up a wall there.
Well, it does show an opening there, so that we would be able to pass through if we needed to. That's the gap in the wall. But yeah, we could choose to just go with something as simple as a curtain. Again, it just loses a little bit of the noise dampening, should there be something going on the other side of that.
I also want to just point out that you have programming 4 days a week in the evening, but you have programming 5 days a week, or 6 days a week actually in the morning.
Correct. Sorry, yes.
Okay. Anything else for Sean?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I think that the reason it was subdivided is because, number one, it's just a huge space. It's very, very long. So dividing it makes sense to make it kind of more usable. And then having that other half for a whole variety of uses. If we leave it unfinished, obviously, we save money, but we can use it for storage. And then if there is a demand, that next leg up in demand, we could finish that space too and have that as a rec space down the road. That's the idea of that 42-foot space. But I mean, it's just a blank canvas right now. I guess the question want to get in front of the board is, what timing do we want to pursue this? Do we want to try to put this into next year's budget? Do we want to try to get that revenue generated earlier, or what is everybody's thoughts on that?
You have the demand for it, it sounds like, with the programming. I mean, I don't know about coming up with it now, but maybe for next year's budget, it might be something.
Well, I think we need to have a broader discussion, because this space, if we do lease it out to someone else, we're gonna have to put 10 improvements in here. And
But what?
we have to build it out. I mean, if someone comes in here, they're more than likely gonna want $5 to $10 worth of 10 improvements, I'm just guessing, right, to come in. And Lee, do you remember what the time frame was on the bond, from the bonding
Well-
standpoint? Was it about 4 years, or,
Remaining that we could lease it out.
Yeah.
I thought it was close, maybe in 5 years, but I mean, I can go dig it up. I could go dig it up pretty quick.
They
but-
changed too, didn't they? I mean, we had a deadline and suddenly we didn't have a
Well,
deadline.
we thought the deadline was,
We thought the deadline
like this
was May.
year, and then
Yeah.
they
Like
did
yesterday.
they did a recalculation or something, so.
Yeah.
where I'm headed with that is to do a cost analysis of this. And we want to look at what we could rent it out for. We would need to calculate in there what we would need to put in for tenant improvements, and what we could get for rent over the whatever period of time that is. If we're doing a cost benefit on it. The other thing is, it's going to cost us money whether we're using it or not. So if we wait till next year to put it in the budget, we still have to heat it. And we still have, you can't just turn off the heat in there, because it's got, it's got a wet sprinkler system.
And I think what they're proposing is temporary enough where if we did get a tenant they might have to readjust, but we'd have to have somebody that's gonna give us enough to make it worth, sacrificing the Parks and Rec space, and I think.
Here's my thought on it. This is something that the opportunity is here for us to really do something for the folks that live here in the village. And the current programming, I take the morning classes. I hear the afternoon classes have more people in them than the morning classes typically. We don't have a whole lot of excess space in the morning classes. And I think with the new person coming on in recreation, and we start really marketing, we probably could easily double the number of people we have there now. I see great benefit of doing something with this and not waiting, if we can find a way to do it. And we would have a revenue stream during this period of time. In long term, these improvements we're putting in, I would guess, are going to last quite some time. Where if we do put somebody in the building for 5 years, you have to assume you're going to have to take them out and still do the same improvements again in the future.
I found the answer, Mick. It's May 31st, 2021. And then after that, if you wanted to lease it longer, we would have to refinance with it couldn't be tax exempt bonds, which is, and obviously there's a cost to do a refinancing of that size. So, but if we keep the current financing as it is, it would be until 2021, May 31st of 2021, to be leased to a non-local governmental entity.
Maybe less than three.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, by the time you do 10
wants to
improvements,
do
get
that.
someone in, you're down to a 2
Not that space
year.
that's not-
It's hardly worth it at that point.
It's not,
Yeah.
it's not even worth talking about.
Yeah.
It sounds like if we have the need for it ourselves, I'd just
Oh,
assume we use it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, you said we were talking about 24,000?
Yep.
Question I have, what sources of funds would we have available if we wanted to do something like that now versus waiting until we had funds, till the next budget cycle? And if we wait till the next budget cycle, when would we actually be able to have those, like the new floor put in and all that?
To do it now, it would have to come out of reserves, or we'd have to find somewhere else in the budget to not spend. Next year, these would be eligible costs to, the cable fund dollars that went into the reserves for these type of purposes. However, that there already is a 5-year plan on how some of those are going to be funded, so we'd have to find room within that 5-year plan. Otherwise, it would just be a normal budget item would be the other option.
Yeah, but if you do it even then, you're looking at starting work in January. The time that people want to use something like that is now when the weather is just terrible. Otherwise, they're going to probably, more likely, a lot of those people be outside. So you'd lose another cycle, essentially.
The other thing I really like about this plan is you no longer would need to go around the building and go in the blue door. You come in the front.
I mean, if there's a way to make it work, I'm fine with it. Any other questions for Sean or comments?
Probably work as a second polling place too.
Potentially.
Yeah, because there's a little office in the front that's not shown in that picture, but they had, I mean, it's not much of an office. It's just kind of a space that's divided off from the big space.
Yeah.
So that.
It's towards the bottom, but yeah, we kind of figured we'd use that as a space for people to come in, be able to change their shoes.
Yeah.
Have some benches in there to sit on, and then enter the fitness area or the program area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sean, I know one time you had mentioned that there had been some programming that we had done with the Parks Department in the past, or Recs Department, I should say, such as archery and different things like that. Would this space be able to accommodate uses for people that are maybe more than 10 to 13, 14 range?
Absolutely, and that's one thing that we want to do with this space, especially is with our new rec supervisor coming on, is just get more into enrichment stuff that would program directly towards that age group.
You know, kind of go, Jeff, what you said, which is all kind of on your heart, you know, about trying to find ways for these younger.
Yeah, that's what we
kind
talked
of that-
about at the meeting that night.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
9, 10 to when you can drive, I guess, age.
Yeah, yeah,
Something for them to do.
yeah. No, the space is perfect for it.
Yeah.
It really is.
And Mick, if I may, the current space that we have here, we use, we'll be programming archery again, starting this summer. We lost our instructor last year, so we weren't able to do that, but we can do that on that side, so we would certainly be able to do more on the additional space.
I heard that there were a lot of kids signed up for the archery, is that right?
Yeah, well, we're hoping that. In the past, we run it in like week-long sessions, so like a camp scenario, but we had 3 classes for each week. So we maxed out at 12 kids per class. So it was very popular.
And there are surveys for some feedback on these type of questions that are out there. So far, 35 responses to the question of, you know, put the space on the market to be leased, keep the space empty, or use the space as expanded recreation fitness class uses, and the recreation expansion as 60% of the 35, or of the registered voters in the village. There have been 35 votes. I don't see the breakdown right now of registered versus all respondents, but of all respondents, it's 54%, and of registered voters, it's 60%. But, you know, we'll get more. We've been getting, for the questions that we did for the public works, as far as like plowing and brush collection, and those were the first questions that we asked, and we got over 60-some votes. So, you know, it's getting a little bit more popular. So we should be getting some more responses. Sean also asked questions about the types of uses, types of classes. So we should get some feedback on that to share with everybody too.
Yeah, just different program ideas, you know, what people might be interested in that we're currently not offering.
If I can ask Sean, if we do decide to remodel that space and, $24,000 on the high side, is there going to be any additional equipment or anything like that would need to be purchased in addition to the remodel?
No, just the flooring is the biggest part of that. That's included in the 24,000. So we would just have to look at our budget for as far as like more weights and more things like that. So that we don't know. And I've asked all of our instructors, including our cheer and tumbling, to start thinking outside the box and saying, okay, if we were able to do this with this space and you each had your own locations, what would you do? What more could we offer that we're currently not doing right now? So we meet with them next Friday to kind of start putting together some of those ideas. So as of right now, no, that would be something that we would be looking at for the 2019 budget, to come out of our our revenues and expenses.
Okay. Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, so do we need to have an agenda item to have, well, what's the next step, I guess, is what do you think? If we
We'll put this on for approval,
The next-
proposed plan for the expansion of the Parks and Rec space.
Okay, all right, let's put that on the agenda for next
Yeah.
meeting.
And just make it, basically just reword it, instead of discuss, it's discuss and consider.
Okay.
And I think part of that discussion is going to have to be where we're going to find the money for it.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Is there anything in addition that you would like me to provide for that we, again, I haven't went out and sought hard bids for this. I just wanted to get a general number
Yeah.
for you, which I think,
The flooring you're talking about obviously is a big ticket item. Is that the stuff that you can remove and reconfigure somewhere else, if, like the tiles that interlock or something?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we had a plan B, we could move the flooring somewhere else too. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, on to Joint Fire Department Committee.
All right. So we had our meeting on January 29th, Monday. We tabled the discussion about revisions to the agreement for fire protection services. That's still being bannered about between the legal teams yet, as far as legal experts. Okay. So that one will be back on the agenda for the next time we meet in March 26th. Touched on the computer network issues for the emergency building. There was issues with not even being able to hook up with the central printer for the folks in the building itself. Those upgrades were completed. It was through the budget for 2017, which we were thankfully, due to weather, we were pleasantly surprised with some extra funds, but we addressed that problem, which was a major problem for the office staff there. There is still an issue with the connectivity out into the bays, and the fire folks wouldn't mind getting that addressed, so we're just going to seek out a bid to see what the cost would be there. It's going to be obviously a hard line and another router or something of that sort, but we don't know what that is, nor where we get the funds for that at this point. But we do need a number to figure that out. It'd be more of a nice to have rather than need. EMS is covered due to their connectivity through the ambulance, because they always have to be connected. Talked about tightening up the response in personal vehicles. We asked the chief brought this up, thought that we should be, Chief Wolf thought the policy should be a little more stringent, a little more tightened, based on what he's seen in the past. And again, so the committee asked that he go back to the association and sort that out and bring it back to the committee. Had a discussion about the 2% dues. These are dues that are monies that are received from municipalities and have to be spent in only certain ways, capital improvements, equipment, that type of stuff. And he was just discussing how there was a need or is a need to address kind of the accounting of that, and so the committee certainly asked him to make recommendations to ensure that that's being complied with. This was through audit finding, prior audit findings, so he wants to make sure that that gets sorted, brought it to the committee to let us know that that was being done. The next item was really around the consideration for AFG grant application. These are annual grants that pop up, and there is one currently that he was considering on submitting to for a commander setup for a response vehicle, and was seeking consideration of that. The committee was certainly fine with that. It is a match grant of 5% would be due to the association or communities or whatever. But again, you have to receive the grant first before you can even consider that. So we he brought up the pros and cons of having such a vehicle. The main thing is just communication and having the appropriate. There's like 2 or 3 mobile type stations that you need to have within that, and they're hard to cart around. We do have some. We got them through the town of Burke, actually, when they downsized theirs. So we have the equipment available, we just don't have anywhere to house it and haul it around. The other thing with that, obviously, would be a more first responder type vehicle like EMS has with their Ford Explorer Interceptor vehicle, and that has proved very valuable, I think, in a number of situations. He brought up the fact that you can get on scene with something like that much quicker than, say, the trucks, and assess and give an assessment of what's needed, so that when the fire crews are coming out, they can grab if anything additional is needed. Also, to tell them maybe that certain things aren't needed, so don't send out 3 trucks if you only need 2. So certainly there's value in that. It's indicated that other fire districts have this type of vehicle. That's, I guess, neither here nor there. It's more of what the needs are for our fire department and the coverage and advantages of having that. Chief's report, the only thing other noted there was just that we are down in recruits. They are down to, I think, 32 volunteers, but they fortunately do have 2 or 3 nice new candidates, 2 of which have prior and extensive experience, so that's good news. But definitely the fire chief, Chief Wolf, has some work cut out for him to bump those numbers up. We should be more towards close to 40 to be able to respond effectively. There was a discussion around officer compensation, and this is really about the process. In the past, the town has issued checks out to the individual officers for their compensation, whereas that looks like they're actually employees of the town, and we had voted last year to try to just issue 1 check to the association and have the association handle that, because they're really they're a part of the association, and the association should be handled in that fashion. We also discussed the potential for some sort of hourly for the former chief, and that was tabled because the association is still kind of sorting out what they want to do, so we would like to kind of coordinate with them on that. The next meeting is on March 26th, and there is a discussion item I think Jack has for, we do need another committee member for that.
Yep. Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you. Just like you said, in response to that fire vehicle, the first response vehicle, I talked to the fire chief as well, and it makes a lot of sense that somebody show up in a smaller car and say, no, you don't need to roll 3 big fire trucks through town. That it's okay.
Yeah.
Somebody burnt toast or whatever, that happens. All right. Thank you. Reports from village officers. Troy?
No report.
Nick?
Report.
All right. James?
Your report.
All right. Jeff?
No report.
John? Your name's not on here, but we'll add John.
Yeah.
You're official.
Okay, just an item to note, postcards got sent out by the school district. I know it doesn't really impact the village board, however,
Yeah.
it could potentially impact the taxes of our constituents. So the next step, there's listening sessions. It's good, February 22nd in Winnequa, Monona, and then the 27th at Cottage School.
Okay.
Phase 2 of that is they're developing a survey to kind of get a gauge on the tolerance of tax increases and what's really needed for the constituents. That'll go out in March, and then they'll roll back the survey results to the board April, May timeframe to determine if they're going to move forward with this in 2018.
Okay. It sounds like they're getting the options narrowed down somewhat.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? All right. John?
No report.
All right. Couple things I had on. First is appointments to committees. That's mainly, I guess, about John. I met with John last week, I guess it was, and I'll get these to you. I guess John's going to be on Utility Commission, and I'm going to swap with him and go on to Ordinance, so we're kind of switching there, because John's been on Utility before. He has experience on that one, and then on Joint Fire, which he just talked about, John will be going with John Williams. And Nat Big Landfill Committee and Board of Review. Did these appointments require a vote, Lee, or just so we can?
Well, I
update
think,
everything?
yeah, I mean, we ought to put this on the next agenda to confirm it.
Okay.
Because all of these appointments are subject to your approval and then to the village board to ratify, or your selection and then the village board to ratify it. So we'll
Okay.
put all those on. And I don't know, Jeff, have you assigned Jeff's?
Yeah.
Okay, and was that on a past agenda?
I don't know if we did it that way or not, but we probably could do that if it's a
Probably should do
housekeeping
that,
issue.
just to-
Okay. All right. I know Lisa has a master spreadsheet of all that, so we'll get that all updated, so we have the right people in the right places there.
You're-
So then again, with item 2 and 3, the appointment of Mike Malaj to the Community Development Authority and Melissa to the Plan Commission, that also has to be forwarded to next agenda then? Is that-
No, that's on the.
That's on the
Okay.
agenda, so we're good.
Okay. All right. So as far as the committee assignments, we'll handle that at the next, that's a future agenda item then. And then item 2 is appointment of Mike Malaj to the Community Development Authority. Those of you that don't know, Mike was the past president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm glad he's not going to completely retire. And hopefully and I know he'll be good on the CDA, so at that point, I'll make a motion to appoint Mike Malaj to the Community Development Authority. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second to appoint Mike Malaj to the Community Development Authority. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. And next is appointment of Melissa Radcliffe to the Plan Commission. This is again, John is now a trustee, so he can't be a citizen member of the Plan Commission, so I've asked Melissa, I talked to her quite a while back actually, and she's willing to be on the Plan Commission as a citizen member, so that's that one, and I'll make a motion to appoint Melissa to the Plan Commission.
Second?
Okay. Motion and a second to appoint Melissa to the Plan Commission. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Wednesday night, Melissa, I think second Wednesday is typically a plan? Okay. All right. All right, that's all I have, and we'll make sure we get our spreadsheet updated with the committees in. Lee, anything?
No. No
Okay.
report.
Matt?
Paula Severson is now full-time with the chamber as a chamber director. Aaron and I met with her to, now that she has more time in that role, to see, how we could team up more often and that sort of thing. So that was a good meeting. And then I had an orientation meeting with John Russell. So, yeah, that's all I have.
All right. Aaron?
Last week, MADRAP, the Madison Economic Development Group, passed on a inquiry they received from a hotel developer, so we put a response together for that. Didn't say who it was, but they're looking for sites in southern Wisconsin, smaller communities that need a hotel. So that's all.
It sounded like multiple sites, so
Cool.
hopefully.
Very good.
No idea what brand?
And then we have
Couldn't tell me if you knew.
we have an architectural review committee coming up also, I think, on Thursday, you said, Aaron?
And
Architectural review committee?
Yes.
Got it, okay. All right, Police Chief Dan Labor, anything else?
Nothing.
Okay, JJ, John, anything? Okay, sounds good. On to item 11, consider approval of vouchers. Any comments, questions?
I just had a question. What's a blanket crime bond?
Lacey?
Did I read that right?
What?
I was curious. I didn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure really how to explain it, but it's not police liability. It's not the individuals that are bonded, it's a bond that covers at a low rate all the other employees throughout the village. Staff.
Okay. I kind of thought it was that, but I just wanted
I can get you a better explanation if
to.
you
No,
want.
that's all right.
Okay.
Got it. Still want to make sure.
It's a minimal cost every year.
Any other questions, John?
A question with the reimbursements to the Village of Maple Bluff. There's lift tickets for Cascade and lunch tickets. Is there any explanation?
I'm sorry?
Maple Bluff, we got lift tickets for Cascade Mountain and lunch tickets. Is that for like
Yeah,
a
it's-
youth trip?
We did a ski trip
Got it.
on the 15th, and so they front the money up front, and we have to pay them back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Uh,
Move to approve.
I
Okay.
I just have one more.
Oh, sure.
There was garage door repairs. I'm just
Yes.
asking because we've had issues at the emergency building, so
Yeah.
I'm curious what happened.
They were, basically the parts connecting the panels together on one of the garage doors were pulling apart. When the guys from overhead showed up, they said it's fairly common with these doors, and they just reinforced it. But we were finding the screws on the ground, so,
Oh, nice.
yeah. Luckily, we found it before the garage door was on the ground.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, JD.
Troy, you had a motion to approve then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, motion and second to approve the vouchers. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Correspondence, I have nothing official, so I don't think anything showed up recently. Okay. Future agenda items, we talked about the impact fees. Parks and Rec is coming back with some more information, right? And anything else? Any other?
The amendment to the golfer agreement.
Yep. Okay. And you're going to change some language for the forfeiture
Yes.
fee schedule?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody, anything else? Okay. Sounds good. At this time, I'll make the motion that the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board enters into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1985, Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Discuss property negotiations for the two parcels at the former lift station on Vilas Road. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, we'll need a roll call vote. I'll let Lisa do that.
John?
Aye.
We have two of them.
Oh, yes. John Williams.
Yes.
Okay.
Troy?
Aye.
John Russell?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Jeff?
Oh, hi.
Okay, we're in closed session.